really it should be 2-1 in favor of San Antonio if Wemby doesn't make that stupid pass when I think it was Stephon Castle wasn't even looking at the end of
Correct.
game 2. So, but what I liked about game 3 last night was San Antonio brought the physicality and New York couldn't match it. And Mike Brown, I'm sorry, I don't want to hear about, the differential in terms of how many free throws were taken. And I don't want to hear about, the officiating. Oh, no, this is the damn NBA Finals. Man up or get out of the way. It's that damn simple.
And the thing is, all three of these games have been very physical games. And I do feel like for 8 or 9 quarters of this series, even though they're down a game, the Spurs have been the better team. They were up by 15 in game 1. They were up, double digits early last night as well. And again, Josh, over the weekend, I said it. I thought in game 1 and game 2 for the start of these finals, I thought Victor Wembanyama had back-to-back D performances. Yes, he put up 25 and 10, but they weren't impactful. In the first half of game 2, he only shot the ball 4 times. It was way too little. And I thought, and again, after game 2, the whole consensus, it felt like around my friends, around the media, were all, this series is over. It could be a sweep. And I never felt that way because I felt like from the start of the second half of game 2, going into last night, I thought the Spurs outplayed the Knicks. I thought it looked like Victor Wembanyama started to figure out the Knicks' physicality at the end of game 2. And I thought the Spurs' momentum, even though they lost game 2, carried over into last night. And now it's going to be on the Knicks to adjust back to what the Spurs are doing, because the one adjustment that the Spurs made from game 1 to game 2 that I do think is working is they are getting very physical with Jalen Brunson from the moment he brings the ball up. They are not even letting him get the ball up easy past half court. They're bumping him. They're getting very physical with him, and I think it's taking a physical toll on him.
Yeah, and on that note with Jalen Brunson, you go back and watch last night, he turned into Jalen Harden. Go back and watch how many possessions he's just dribbling and the shot clock is winding down.
Well, so 2 things to that. Number one of it is the Spurs pressure. Number 2 is
right. I agree with you.
And I said this about Victor Wembanyama, even though, again, on the offensive end in game 1 and game 2, I thought he did not play well until about the fourth quarter of game 2.
Mm-hmm.
But you can see his defensive presence on the floor from game 1 from tip. How many times are the Knicks dribbling, going into the rim, and when Victor Wembanyama is on the floor, they are doing a literal U-turn to back away from the basket. And then the minute he leaves the game, they immediately are just downhill, attacking the basket. And so far.
Also, to your point, I think in games 1 and 2, they were getting Cat involved early and often throughout those 2 games. And you could make the argument that through at least game 1 and game 2, Cat was the front runner to be finals MVP. But then you go back and watch last night's game, Cat was pretty much a no-show, and they really didn't get him involved in the offense.
Here's the stat about Karl-Anthony Towns that is telling to me about how this series is going.
Okay.
Karl-Anthony Towns, in just the fourth quarter of this series, has played 29 minutes. He has 0 points in the fourth quarter of this series, and he's 0 for 6 from the field.
Yeah. But again, his defense on Wemby, at least in the first 2 games, was actually effective. And
I thought game 1 and the first half of game 2, and I think even Barkley said it at halftime, where he's like a fighter. that wasn't used to the physicality. And I do believe this. I think in their heart of hearts, the Spurs did not believe in the Knicks. They didn't think they were this great of a team. When they beat the Thunder, I think they truly thought we just won the NBA championship. And it took the Knicks to literally almost physically punch them in the mouth and force them down 0-2 at home to take the Knicks seriously. And you could see, in my opinion, again, even though they lost game 2 because of that the pass and the missed shot down the stretch, there was like a light bulb that went off in the Spurs' head that says, okay, if they're going to be this physical, we have to get this physical back with them. And in my opinion, since that moment, the series has changed.
And I will admit, maybe the Knicks got caught up in all the hoopla at Madison Square Garden, with the president being there and the heightened security. And
well, I don't even think it's that. Can I throw something at you that everybody disagrees with me on, but I think it's a legit take. I actually think that for the Spurs, it was a lot harder playing in San Antonio because I think the true die-hard Knicks fans who could afford to go to games actually decided it is cheaper and a lot more affordable for us to go down to San Antonio. I think last night's crowd, even though they were loud and Knicks fans are going to be there, and I get it, I thought it was a more CEO, celebrity crowd and wasn't going to be this crazy atmosphere that people thought it was going to be because of the ticket prices.
Yeah, the ticket prices are ridiculous. I don't know how the average fan can go to a Knicks playoff game.
I mean, one ticket for a game at MSG, they were saying costs more than New York rent.
Yeah. Good luck to those kids whose parents went to Madison Square Garden for game 3. Good luck to those kids affording college.
Here's the other thing, and obviously we're going to dive into this series more as the night goes on. If you ask me right now in game 4, who has the most pressure, the Knicks or the Spurs? I think the answer is obviously the Knicks. You can't be up 2-0 in San Antonio. Go back to the hollow ground of Madison Square Garden, where you haven't seen a finals game since 1999, and lose both games at home. That, to me, will offset the momentum that you had in San Antonio.
New York is opening up as a 1.5-point favorite going into game 4 tomorrow.
Which was the same line as game 3, which tells me Vegas still believes the Spurs are going to win this series. Because if they thought the Knicks were going to win, that line would be 3.5 or 4 points, I personally believe.
When I looked at game 3, I thought I saw New York was like a 5.5-point favorite.
No, it was Knicks 1.5. It was the same line as you're describing for game 4.
Okay, maybe I just misread it then, which very well could be the case. But in terms of which team needs game 4 more, I actually believe it's San Antonio. Because if San Antonio loses, then they're going back home down 3-1, which we've only seen one team come back from down 3-1 in the NBA Finals. We all know who it is. Our Cleveland Cavaliers in 2016. Of course, you can't ignore the elephant in the room. That was aided by Draymond Green being suspended for Game 5. I can't ignore that. So it's only happened once. So,
but you know what was similar, in my opinion, between that Cavs comeback and what the Spurs could do? Like, I felt the same way with the Cavs when they were down 3-1. That I felt the same way about the Spurs when they were down 2-0. It's like, the Cavs, I felt like even in Game 4, outplayed Golden State. They just sort of lost it at the end. I feel like for 3 games, the Spurs have outplayed the Knicks, and they just need to finish. And again, the Spurs youth is showing a little bit in this series at times, but even last night, the game looks like it's on the ropes. Victor Wembanyama stumbling with the shot clock winding down, just a little bit over a minute left, throws a pass to Stephon Castle, who should not be ready to shoot a 3, and bam, drops a three, and they're up 7. And at that moment, it's like this Spurs team, as young as they are, is not supposed to be able to do this. They already have that LeBron did in his career, that Michael Jordan did in his career. That's what they're doing right now.
Your audio completely cut out, so I didn't hear any of what you just said.
Okay, so let me repeat. I said that, even last night, right, when the Spurs are up 4 and the shot clock's winding down with over a minute left, and Wemby's stumbling, and he throws that pass out to Stephon Castle. Stephon Castle should not be expected to make that 3 with the shot clock winding down to put them up 7 with a minute left, but he hit it. And to me, this Spurs team, while their youth is showing in these finals a little bit at times, they have been through battles and they are way mature above their years. And I do think there is similarities between that and them outplaying the Knicks the same way that it was. I thought the Cavs were outplaying Golden State in that 2016 series a decade ago, even though they were down 3-1.
Okay. I understand what you're saying, but if you're San Antonio, you don't want to go back home with your season on the line.
You don't, but and again, I understand you already lost 2 games at home, but also you've won an MSG before, and 2 of the next 3 are at home, which to me is also benefit you. So listen, in my opinion, if the Spurs win game 4, they may just do what Milwaukee did in 2021 and what Miami did in 06 and be down 0-2 and win 4 straight.
It could happen. I think I saw a stat. No team has ever lost the first 2 games at home and gone on to win the championship.
Correct, which leads me to our next topic, because this is a question centered around me. Because last week I came out and I did say, and Sean Fitzgerald, friend of the show, was with us, and I said, 10 toes down, I believe that there is going to be a next dynasty in the NBA. It's not going to be Oklahoma City, that it is going to be San Antonio. And I was confident going into this series. Josh, before the series started, I predicted the Spurs to win in 5 games. After game 1, I obviously knew that wasn't going to happen. I amended it to Spurs in 7, and I am sticking with that pick, even though they were down 0-2 and are currently down 2-1. But no, I'm not backing off my take at all. I do feel like that this Spurs team, this is only the beginning. And if they lose this series, I'm not going to kill anybody in this series because, again, this is a bunch of 20, 21, and 22-year-olds. At this point in his career, Michael Jordan was getting beat up by the Larry Bird Boston Celtics. At this point in his career, Magic Johnson was being called Tragic Johnson. And at this point in his career, LeBron James being eliminated in the second round in a Game 7 of the 2006 semifinals against the Detroit Pistons. And yet Victor Wembanyama, who I still think, and I will stand by this, even though he has not played well in this series all that great, I think his ceiling is the greatest basketball player to have ever graced this guy's green earth. And yet his D games are 28 points and 10 rebounds.
I'm not ready to say they're the next dynasty. I'm not dismissing Oklahoma City. They still have Shea. If Jalen Williams can stay healthy, we'll see what happens with Chet Holmgren. I'm not. There's no way you can just exclude them. They won the championship last
year. But I guess my point is this. Over the next 10 years, and in LeBron's prime, starting in 2007, they may have not made the finals every year. Remember that they didn't. LeBron had to leave Cleveland to go get help because he didn't have any help. But the Cavs were prohibited favorites since they made the finals in 2007 and got swept by the Spurs to make the finals every single year LeBron was on the team. I think for the next decade, the Spurs will be the favorite to win the championship every single year.
It depends on if they can keep their core together because
I don't think that there is any way in hell they will let the big. I am calling it a big 3 because I think it is Wemby, Castle, Harper. Now, obviously, there's going to be changes. I think Fox may be out of here like next year, and they're going to have to get more role players. I understand that there's going to be changes. But this is your second version, if you will, of Duncan, Parker, and Manu Ginobili.
Oh wow, you're really talking big by bringing them in. Because I hold the three of them in high regard. Duncan's one of my all-time favorite players.
Josh, at 21 years old, Dylan Harper's dunking over people in the NBA Finals. I've never seen anything like that from a guard at his age.
Let me ask you a question about that, because we know De'Aaron Fox is compromised health-wise right now. Do you think the Spurs should make a change in the starting lineup and put Harper in and have Fox come off the bench?
The problem with that is you need someone to at least run the offense when Wemby is not on the court, because they are already minus in this series when Wemby is on the court. It's actually very similar to the OKC series, where with Jalen Brunson on the court, the Knicks are minus 10. And with Wemby off the court, the Knicks are dominating those minutes.
So you would not make that change then? Is what
No, I don't think I would this year. Obviously, next year, I think Dylan Harper's going to start. But, I don't think, and I know Golden State made their game-changing move in Game 4 of 2015 and inserted Andre Iguodala into the starting lineup. I think for the Spurs, these guys are so young, just keep their roles the same. Don't keep changing their roles. Iggy was a veteran. Dylan Harper is a rookie. It's a lot different circumstances.
Okay. So, again, I'm not dismissing OKC. If Ant can get healthy and they can put a couple more pieces around him, I like Ayo Dosunmu.
Okay, but again, here's my question with the T-Wolves. Who do they have currently on their roster today that can guard Wemby?
That's where the issue is. You are
that's what I'm telling you. OKC might have an option. It's a guy who currently right now is a Milwaukee Buck. Like that, he is the only one that I can legitimately see OKC making a move to go get Giannis for me to say, okay, they could beat the Spurs in a 7-game series. Because I'm all about in 7 games, when this guy gets his man body, because right now his only weakness is he doesn't have a great post game. Because if he had a great post game, Mitchell Robinson would be sitting on the bench because he'd be destroying him. That's why I said it last week that Mitchell Robinson was so valuable in this series, because at this point in time, he can bump Wemby. What's going to happen when the guy gains 10 pounds of muscle just by growing in his body? He's going to be unstoppable.
This is why I wish Denver had won their first round series against Minnesota. I wanted to see that Jokic-Wemby matchup.
And you know what's crazy? As great as Jokic is, I don't think he can guard Wemby because I don't think he's quick enough.
Here's the thing. You know you're not going to be able to stop Wemby. He's too good for that. But we've seen Jokic be able to slow him down a little bit.
Well, here's the thing, right? And I hate to make the comparisons back to LeBron, but it's true because Wemby is at that level now, in my opinion. The way you stopped LeBron early on was Greg Popovich always talked about. You formed a wall. You forced him to take jump shots. That was the weakness in his game.
Didn't Toronto do that in the 2019 conference finals against Giannis? Wasn't that there?
Yeah, that was Giannis' weakness, and I would argue it's still somewhat Giannis' weakness because he still hasn't gotten a great shot. To me, Wemby's weakness is physicality. You have to get physical with him. And the Knicks have a guy to do it in Mitchell Robinson. The problem is he doesn't shoot free throws well, and he doesn't shoot to begin with. So unless the Spurs are not in the penalty, he's useless.
Yeah, and but you have to admit this, when OG Anunoby has been on him, he's given Wemby some problems. I think it's because OG, no, he's not nearly as big as Wemby, but he brings that level of physicality on defense. And we've seen it in this series and in the regular season matchups. It gives Wemby a little bit of a problem.
100%. And by the way, we're not even, as great as Dylan Harper's, but we're not even talking about Stephon Castle and his potential. Because
Yes.
you talked about it that, in our intro tonight, you talked about that he is the X factor for the Spurs.
And
And
I
I
still
thought,
believe that
and I
because
thought last night he was spectacular. I talked about that three he made to put them up 7 with over a minute left. I thought that was the clincher. I thought, because if the Spurs don't make that shot, I'm not going to lie to you, I'm not sure if they get this game home.
so here's the thing. Yes, the Spurs don't have a lot of playoff experience. De'Aaron Fox went to game 7 against Golden State. Ironically, when Mike Brown was their head coach, Harrison Barnes won a championship with Golden State. But here's the thing that everybody seems to forget. Stephon Castle was part of those UConn teams that went back to back.
Yes.
So he may not have NBA playoff experience, but he damn sure has, I guess you would call it postseason experience.
I guess my question is, I'm going to make a quick football analogy. I wonder if the Spurs are going to be like the Patriots or the Chiefs, and the T-Wolves are going to be the Bills, the Ravens, the Colts, and Steelers during Brady's era. Or it's like we have great teams. We can't get by the GOAT.
Oh boy. I feel like it's too early to say that.
See,
That's why
I understand the temptation. I'm just telling you, I have never in my 20 damn near 8 years of living seen a team this good this early ever in my lifetime. The only thing that it reminds me of is the Showtime Lakers with Magic Johnson and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and obviously we know what those two turned into.
Yes. No, what you're saying makes sense. I just think let's let them get through this NBA Finals and then have that conversation. I'm not ready to go there yet.
Well, last week you were 10 toes down.
And I still am.
And you still are, that if the Knicks win this championship, there's going to be an asterisk behind it in your eyes. So the question is, Josh, how will you remember this Knicks team if they win the championship?
So, just for those who may not remember, my whole stance with this Knicks team is they have been the beneficiaries of their opponents going to a game 7 and only having one day off, or minimal days off in the case of the Spurs, before turning around and having to play the Knicks. And Brandon tried to present the argument to me that the Cavs went through the same thing back in 2016. And you were almost right. However, the Atlanta Hawks did not go to a game 7 against the Boston Celtics in their first round series back in 2016.
Well, the Cavs also swept them, so.
Yes.
How good are the Hawks?
True. Because that was the series where we set the NBA record for 3-pointers.
Yes.
But here's the thing. Do I strongly dislike the New York Knicks? Yes, I do. However, Mikal Bridges, I am a big fan of him. I like how he plays. I will admit, I think the Knicks gave up way too much to get him in terms of all the draft picks, but he's been playing well, but he's got to do it more consistently. I also like Josh Hart, even though he can be a pain in the butt to play against, but his personality is great. I wanted the Cavs to trade for him. He would have been great for that small forward position. But nonetheless, he ended up in New York. But in terms of this team overall, they've been dominant. I can't take that away from them. They have been dominant. And what I will remember most about this team is their never say die attitude. Think about it. They were down 22 at home in game 1 of the Eastern Conference Finals against the Cavs. And did they wave the white flag and go, okay, Cleveland, you win? Nope. They made a crazy comeback aided by our head coach being way too analytically driven. By the way, Brandon, did you know we're up 2-1 in the analytical NBA finals?
By the way, I mean the Spurs are up 2-1 because I mean they analytically outplayed the Knicks in game 2 and game 3. So
there you go. Game 4 of the analytical NBA finals between the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Cleveland Cavaliers is tomorrow night at Rocket Arena. So there you go. I suggest watching that instead of Spurs Knicks game 4. Yes, I am only kidding. Don't you worry. But no. That is what I will remember the most about this Knicks team is their never say die attitude. And okay, we're just gonna put our foot on your throat, and you're not getting up.
If the Knicks pull this off, whether it be in 5 games, 6 games, or 7 games, 7 may be pushing it for what I'm about to say, but I will remember it as the second most dominant playoff run of my lifetime, only behind the 17 Golden State team that went 15-1 and won 15 straight, gave up game 4 to the Cavs so they could win game 5 on their home floor. That team may go down as one of the greatest teams ever. I know they didn't beat Michael Jordan's 72-10 Bulls team, but talent-wise, that would have been the greatest collection of talent we've ever seen. And this Knicks team isn't that. But you know what they had until they lost last night? A 13-game win streak where they won every single game by double digits and were winning by a record playoff margin. More so than the Bulls of the 90s, more so than those 2 Golden State teams that went back-to-back that I talked about, more so than the Lakers team that went back-to-back-to-back with Kobe and Shaq in the middle of the 2000s. And you can say what you want about their opponents, and they played bottom feeders. What I'm scared about is if the Knicks win the championship, the Cavs are going to say, well, we lost to the NBA champions. What do you want us to do? Because we lost to the Pacers last year. They got to the finals, and we lost to the Knicks. And listen, nobody, I think, really believed the Pacers were a finals team last year. They got the best circumstances possible. And this Knicks team, I would argue, did take advantage of some circumstances, but so did San Antonio. And every team in the NBA needs a little luck. And I think that this Knicks team, if they were to pull off this championship, the story of Jalen Brunson was a guy who was forgotten about as Luka Doncic's sidekick in Dallas. Everybody was mad about the fact that they didn't go out and trade for Donovan Mitchell. They signed Jalen Brunson instead. Karl-Anthony Towns was viewed as a disappointment, I would say, as the number 1 pick, especially because he did not lead Minnesota to the promised land. Him and Julius Randle were both mocked for that trade a couple years ago. You brought up the fact that everybody said the Knicks overpaid for Mikal Bridges with 5 first-round picks. Mike Brown was fired 4 times. It's probably the Knicks' 5th choice for head coach. And yet if they win this championship, all of that doesn't matter. That's my takeaway.
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying. I got to throw another question at you here. If the Knicks win the title, I'll fix that, by the way, who looks worse, the Dallas Mavericks or the Minnesota Timberwolves?
You got to explain the Dallas part to me. Is that because Dallas let Brunson go?
Yes.
Okay, so who looks worse, the Mavs or the Wolves? I think by far easily it's the Timberwolves because Luka and Jalen Brunson, the fit was not going to work. They're both ball-dominant players. For the Knicks, Julius Randle was good with the Knicks. They just didn't unlock his potential. He plays a very similar style to Karl-Anthony Towns. He's actually more physical than Towns. Towns is a better shooter, I would argue. So I think for this, it is Minnesota. And to me, it's not even close because with Brunson, again, he was going to leave anyway because the fit with Luka didn't work. And the Mavericks did get to an NBA Finals without Jalen Brunson.
Yeah, maybe he could have been their 6th man because who knows if they get Klay
But But I would argue Jalen Brunson doesn't become the Jalen Brunson that we know now that I rightfully, before the playoffs, I believe, said he definitively is, over Giannis Antetokounmpo, the best player in the Eastern Conference. I don't think we get that Jalen Brunson if he's the sixth man in Dallas. He turns into what James Harden was in 2012 for OKC, which James Harden doesn't become the guy he is if he doesn't get traded to Houston the first time, and I believe that as well.
So I understand what you're saying, but I think Luka and Brunson could have found a way to make it work. I really do. We saw flashes of what they could have looked like together, where Luka is the primary ball handler, or better yet, you have Brunson as the primary ball handler. You have Luka play off the ball. I think that would have worked really well, actually, for Dallas.
Well, actually, I disagree because I think a lot like LeBron, I think Luka's best skill is his passing. And he can't be that great of an assist guy if he doesn't have the ball in his hand.
So if you want Luka to play on the ball and have Brunson play off the ball, that's fine.
But Brunson does not work off the ball as well, I would argue. His superpower is he has 13 points for 3 quarters, and you look up, and by the end of the game, he has 30 because he's got the ball in his hand in the fourth quarter, and he's just making crazy shots and getting to the free throw line.
But here's the thing. If Luka is attracting all the defense, there's Brunson wide open for a big shot.
Well, the thing is, though,
and vice versa. If Brunson is on the hot streak, he gets the double team. Ta-da! There's Luka wide open.
Well, I think one of the reasons why Kyrie worked with Luka is because Kyrie is more of a scoring first guard. Brunson, even though he scores, I think of him more as not as much as a Halliburton of a pass first guy, but he definitely wants to get his teammates involved more than score.
See, I view him more as a score first kind of guard because of the way he turns it on late in the game.
In the fourth quarter, he does. I agree with you. But the first 3 quarters, he can be as passive as a point guard can be. I mean, again, you look up and he's got 13 points and he's 9 of 20 from the field. But by the end of the game, he's got 30 because he takes the game over, which he would not be able to do if Luke is next to him.
So with Minnesota, like they got to a Western Conference Finals with Cat and Gobert and Ant, and for some reason they just decide, no, this isn't going to work.
Well, again, because Ant needs the ball and so does Cat. And I would argue that Ant is more ball dominant than Jalen Brunson is for most of the game. Where Randall doesn't need the ball at all. Randall is sort of a catch and shoot. He's not going to bring the ball up. He's not a passer. That's the difference.
That part I agree with you, so in my opinion, it's actually Dallas that looks worse. I understand what you're saying about Minnesota, and I understand your argument in terms of Brunson and Luka not working well together. But coming out of Villanova, we knew what Brunson could be. I didn't think he could turn into this, but we saw him. Granted, no,
Randall, though, I would argue has Randall not raised his play since he went to Minnesota, and they got back to a conference finals with him as well.
No, your point is totally valid. I'm not necessarily disagreeing with that. But to me, Dallas letting Brunson walk, I'm trying to think of how to say this because I know what I want to say in my head. But it's like Dallas allowing Brunson to walk when we all knew he was going to go to New York if he got out of Dallas. It was like, really? You're not even going to try?
Well, here's the question. Does Dallas still trade Luka if Brunson's there?
I don't think so.
See, that's where I think this conversation is kind of null and void. Because Jalen Brunson leaving to go to the Knicks and not staying in Dallas, you could argue, changed the course of NBA history.
Yeah. if Brunson stays in Dallas, I don't think Luka gets traded.
And I also don't think Dallas makes the finals. I will say that. Because they let Brunson go to free up that money so they could get those bigs. Gafford and those guys. And that's how, and they got Kyrie, and that's how they built around Luka, was they add bigs where Luka didn't have to do any of the defending. They had all those bigs that can defend for him. And by the way, even though Kyrie isn't great of a defender, he's a better defender than Brunson. And I don't think you can have two small guards or as defensive liabilities as your two main scorers.
We've experienced that here in Cleveland.
Exactly my point. So, all right,